The protection squad known as the SS was responsible for numerous crimes against humanity and is known for its cruelty and brutality, but the horrific acts of the SS Special Dirlewanger unit were too much even for SS members, and the unit was considered too cruel even among criminals. The unit led by Oskar Dirlewanger was largely made up of convicted criminals who were now used to murder Jews and Polish resistance fighters and carried out the murders in an especially cruel manner. Dirlewanger was an alcoholic and fraudster. Prior to his SS career, he was even convicted of raping a 13-year-old girl. This video deals with the cruel crimes of Oskar Dirlewanger and his unit, as well as his fate after the war. Oskar Dirlewanger was born on September 26, 1895, as the son of a merchant in Würzburg, attended grammar school and graduated in 1913. On July 28, 1914, World War I began and Dirlewanger became a member of the SS. World War I began, and Dirlewanger participated in the invasion of Belgium and France with a regiment of grenadiers. During the war he was wounded several times, some of them seriously. Oskar Dirlewanger traveled with various nationalist Free Corps until 1921. Then he studied economics at the University of Mannheim, but there he was discharged due to the anti-Semitic agitation of Vanna. He continued his studies in Frankfurt, and there he received a doctorate in political science. Already in 1922, he joined the German National Socialist Party and was one of the first members of this organization. Shortly thereafter, Dirlewanger joined the Sturmabteilung, a paramilitary group that persecuted political opponents and strengthened the influence of the NSDAP. For 10 years, Dirlewanger held a full-time leadership position in 1932, after the National Socialists came to power. In 1933, Dirlewanger received preferential treatment as a long-time member and was given a position at the Labor Office in Heilbronn, where he later even became deputy director. Dirlewanger developed pedophilic tendencies at the time, raped a 13-year-old girl, and sexually abused another minor. He was sentenced to only 2 years in prison for this, and also lost his commissions, his doctorate, and all military honors. After his release in 1936, he participated in the Spanish Civil War for 3 years as a member of the Condor Legion. The Condor Legion was an air unit of the Wehrmacht that was deployed on the side of the nationalist coup plotters under the command of Francisco Franco. Without German uniforms and insignia, the unit carried out the first major air raids against the civilian population of a European country and had a decisive influence in the victory of Francisco Franco. The existence of this unit operating undercover was not recognized until the end of the war. This covert operations unit was denied by the German and Spanish governments, and it was not until 1939 that Oskar made a name for himself in Spain and, thanks to his good contacts with influential Nazi figures, managed to have his 1934 trial reopened despite the fact that evidence of the rape of the then 13-year-old girl still existed. In 1940, Dirlewanger was acquitted by the Stuttgart Regional Court and regained all his privileges. In the meantime, World War II was raging and the rehabilitated Dirlewanger was accepted into the SS with the rank of Supreme Leader. Heinrich Himmler personally commissioned him to create the so-called Oranienburg Kommando, a unit consisting of prisoners from the Sachsenhausen concentration camp who had been convicted of poaching and other crimes, since the crime of poaching was quite rare. The unit was filled over time with criminals who had committed much more serious crimes and consisted of about 80 men. It was outlawed even within the Waffen-SS. It would quickly become one of the most brutal units of the SS. Dirlewanger and his unit were transferred to Lublin, in occupied eastern Poland. In September 1940, they were responsible for guarding Jewish labor camps. The unit was said to abuse and murder people on a daily basis on a whim. Women were raped and then murdered. Dirlewanger is said to have injected Jewish women with poison and then forced them to undress. The victims were whipped, and the unit reveled in the women's agony. The atrocities committed by the unit knew no bounds. There were even testimonies that people were boiled alive and Dirlewanger had made soap out of them. These acts were even too much for the SS, and charges were prepared against Dirlewanger. He had also enriched himself with the victims and was guilty of theft, racketeering, and corruption. The planned proceedings were delayed in February 1942 by moving the unit to Belarus, where the unit was deployed to fight the partisans. The group continued its heinous crimes here. and committed systematic genocide against the civilian population. Dirlewanger was ordered to expel the entire population of the disputed areas. The unit burned villages, raped women, and murdered their inhabitants, including children. Dirlewanger preferred to crowd the villagers into a building and then set fire to it. People who tried to escape were shot with machine guns. Dirlewanger and his unit reportedly burned down 30 villages and killed 30,000 people. The unit was also used to shoot Jews living in ghettos, for example. In September 1942, the unit murdered 8,300 people in the Karanovich ghetto. A particularly perfidious tactic of the unit was to let civilians walk over minefields laid by the Soviets to render them harmless at the expense of live victims. Although Heinrich Himmler knew about the atrocities, Dirlewanger lost a medal in December 1943. In August 1944, the Dirlewanger unit of the ISS was sent to Warsaw to quell the Warsaw Uprising, which was taking place at the time, and committed the Wola massacre on August 1, 1944. An uprising broke out in occupied Warsaw, and Adolf Hitler commissioned the SS to suppress and eliminate the insurgents. Dirlewanger's unit was deployed instead, so the troop, initially consisting of 600 men with about 500 criminals from a prison unit, the SS was deployed from August 5 to 7. Dirlewanger's special unit and other SS units killed a total of 40,000. Nurses were raped and hanged naked while drinking alcohol and singing German folk songs. Troops murdered everyone they encountered regardless of age or sex. Thousands of wounded were quartered in field hospitals in the district and burned alive by the unit with flamethrowers. After the massacre, Oskar Dirlewanger was promoted to SS Führer and decorated with the Knight's Cross. At the end of 1944, the unit was sent to the Eastern Front to fight the advancing Red Army. In February 1945, he was seriously wounded and sent with his family to Württemberg. Dirlewanger tried to go into hiding at the end of April, but was taken prisoner of war in France on May 7, 1945. In prison, he was recognized by former KZ prisoners. Oskar Dirlewanger was murdered on June 17, 1945, although it is still unclear whether the act was committed by former Polish forced laborers or by French soldiers with Polish roots. Historians consider Dirlewanger extremely evil. Dirlewanger is described as an extremely vicious person, a psychopathic killer who practiced his sadism on innocent civilians. Even with criminals, he was noted for his cruelty. So it is not surprising that Dirlewanger did not live long after the war.